All right, so we're on chapter 6 of the Peace Pilgrim. I don't know if you'd call this a biography since she wrote most of it, but it was compiled by others, so it was autobiography, I guess. Her autobiography. So we're on chapter 6, Solving Life's Problems. Oh, wow. Here we're going to get a purpose for our problems. That's going to be cool. The purpose of problems is to push you toward obedience to God's laws, which are exact and cannot be changed. We have the free will to obey them or disobey them. Obedience will bring harmony. Disobedience will bring you more problems. Yeah, see, this is one of the, oh, here comes Bindu. This is one of the ways that I like to think of us living in Scripture. That actually, this moment, actually, it's quite fascinating because this moment is actually all things converge in the here and the now. This moment, the I am, actually is God. It is you. It is love. It's kind of it's where everything meets. It's where reality is. It's the only place reality can be found is in the present, in this moment. And so it is the scripture as well. And it's the reason that for this idea that I'm really falling in love with, that life is religion, that your day-to-day living is your practice, and that being is your scripture. And the way that you read the scripture is through attention, through awareness, being aware always of your divine self and observing, being aware of yourself as the observer, right, and not the doer. And in that space, as the observer and not as the doer, as the watcher, in that comes the scripture, comes the teaching, right? You can always know how your relationship with the divine is by what your relationship with the moment is. Are you content in this moment? Are you happy in this moment? Do you feel loved in this moment? Are you secure in this moment? Are you at peace in this moment? And so it's always good to kind of sit in quiet and ask yourself those questions, and then allow your mind to rest into its answers. To kind of come to an understanding. If there's no to is the answer to any of those questions, then you sink into it. You go in, invite it in, and begin to research what you need to do next. That's how we use the internal guru, that internal presence of God, right? We use that as our north star, our guiding star. And so when we're in this moment and we're feeling restless, it's not to push against it. Don't resist your restlessness. Allow the mind to be restless. Make sure that you know that it is impossible for you to be restless because you are the self. So that's the first thing, is you make sure that you use the proper language so that you know it's body that is restless, it's mind that is restless. And so observe it, and then and don't try and change it. Just inquire, why so restless? Right? And invite yourself in for a conversation. Right? And that itself, just that listening to yourself, that compassion for your inner self, using love as a means for navigating your inner world, that will bring it to a resolution. And this is how we find peace with God, peace with the moment, our contentment through being, right? And the bliss of our nature. All of these converge in the here and now. And so Mother is making a reference to that here, saying that in this moment, if you are not living according to your nature, or the way she says it, is if you're not living according to God's will, then you suffer. I always avoid the idea of God's will, one, because I think that most of us in the West are traumatized by that idea. And also because I don't imagine that God has a will in the way that we talk about will. Because if you are all powerful, all knowing, and everywhere present, what are you going to want? you know, what are you going to want? And so, of course, there's not a will there. God's will is the present moment again. You come down to the moment. Because if you are all powerful, everywhere present, and all knowing, your will is what happens. The moment you want it, boom, it is. Because everything is at your beck and power. And so this moment is God's will. And so this is why we always know it is perfect, and how we can always use the moment as our touchstone for our own perfection or for our own deviation from perfection, right? So it's this presence. It's really quite magical in a sense when you come to know these things, that this world is not material. It's not just a bunch of atoms bouncing around out there, but that this world is consciousness, that it's the divine mind that we inhabit, and that this constant flow of change is the nature of God being presented in its infinity, right? That it can have no end of presentation because it is infinite in its nature. So the world is a constant expression of God, which is why it's constantly flowing, constantly moving, constantly changing, and never repeating, right? And so we find this bliss in that reality. So obedience will bring harmony, right? Listening to the God's will, sitting quietly and aligning yourself with the proper arrangement inside will bring harmony. And disobedience, ignorance will bring more pain, more suffering. They're all stackable. Likewise, when societies get out of harmony, problems develop within the society, collective problems. Their purpose is to push the whole society toward harmony. Individuals can discover that they can not only grow and learn through individual problem solving, but they can learn and grow through collective problem solving. I often say I've run out of personal problems. Then every once in a while, a little one presents itself somewhere, but I hardly recognize it as a problem because it seems so insignificant. Actually, I want to do all my learning and growing now by helping to solve collective problems. Right? That is the second stage of spiritual life. When you're done with your own problems, you're not being self-focused anymore, just doing your own thing. Right? Now she's showing us what the next level is. When the problems in your life are not personal, you're more concerned about the collective problems, and you're investing your efforts in fixing the collective problems. And you see how powerful this is coming from her because that's what she's doing. She's not representing an organization. She doesn't have an order around her. She doesn't have a guru whose flag she's carrying. She's just a woman in love with humanity, wanting the best for the world, and making that her life, making that her life's problem, not her own set of solutions, not her own set of personal problems, desires, and fixes, but she's looking out. She's looking out over everyone else. It's really quite striking. I love her so much for this. I often say I've run out of personal problems, then every once in a while a little one presents itself somewhere, but I hardly recognize it as a problem because it seems so insignificant. Actually, I want to do all of my learning and all of my growing now by helping to solve collective problems. There was a time when I thought it was a nuisance to be confronted with a problem. I tried to get rid of it. I tried to get somebody else to solve it for me, right? And really what she's pointing at there is this resistance to problems, right? To solve a problem, you invite it in, right? You befriend it and you work with it and you use your creativity and your Satchit Ananda to figure out how to solve it, how to get through it in the best way and manifest your divine nature at the same time, right? I tried to get rid of it. I tried to get somebody else to solve it for me. But that time was long ago. It was a great day in my life when I discovered the wonderful purpose of problems. Yes, they have a wonderful purpose. Some people wish for a life of no problems, but I would never wish for such a life for any of you. What I wish for you is the great inner strength to solve your problems meaningfully and to grow. Problems are learning and growing experiences. A life without problems would be a barren existence without the opportunity for spiritual growth. That's a lovely view into a disposition, a very healthy disposition, right? To have the and really, it's just the practice of a non-resistance. She's just open to life. That's really all she's saying. I'm open to life. Life presents me with obstacles, and I work through them, and I get better because of it. I grow stronger. Basically all of our virtues increase when we live in obedience to the moment, when we live in awareness to the moment, right? We become increasingly harmonious and complete and increasingly aware and increasingly present, right? And so others begin to know this and begin to accept our help, what we have to offer, right, into the world. Difficulties with material things often come to remind us that our concentration should be on spiritual things instead of on material things. Right. Well, that's a nice shift there to see the world from a spiritual perspective, to look at the day as to be not what you have to get done for your body and your house and your job and your friends and your children, but start thinking in terms of spirituality, how to take care of your family's spiritual issues, your spiritual issues, how to increase love, how to increase community in the family and the block with your neighbors, how to increase a sense of connection, a sense of harmony between you and the people that to make those the focus of our life, those the important aspects of our life, and not so much, oh, how am I going to pay for that? And oh, how am I going to get that fixed? And all of that. Those things happen. Those things come along of their own accord. But our real creativity is saved for the betterment of others, the betterment of our environment, the betterment of thee and thou, right? That's what Ramakrishna said. That's the big transition that happens through spiritual life. We become less and less me and mine and more thou and thine, right? Always looking for the best. So our concentration should be on spiritual things instead of material things. Sometimes difficulties of the body come to show that the body is just a transient garment, and that the reality is the indestructible essence which activates the body. But when we say, thank God for problems which are sent for our spiritual growth, they are problems no longer. They then become opportunities, right? So this aspect of not only do you accept them, right? Not only do you accept them, but you work them, you work them. I have a quick thing. All right. That we accept them and that we then use them to sharpen ourselves up, to open ourselves up, to increase our love. Really, that's our biggest problem, right? Our biggest problem is not being able to express our love freely, right? Having all of our egoistic considerations to block it. We now try and see our blocks of love to be the problem, right? That we're working on. And not so much just our realization anymore. Our realization falls to the background, and our service and our love for others comes to the front of it. So we see that the body is just a transient garment, and that the reality is the indestructible essence which activates the body. Let me tell you a story of a woman who had a personal problem. She lived constantly with pain. It was something in her back. I can still see her arranging the pillows behind her back so that it wouldn't hurt quite as much. She was quite bitter about this. I talked to her about the wonderful purpose of problems in our lives, and I tried to inspire her to think about God instead of her problems. I must have been successful to some degree, because one night after she had gone to bed, she got to thinking about God. God regards me, this little grain of dust, as so important that he sends me just the right problems to grow on, she began thinking. And she turned to God and said, Dear God, thank you for this pain through which I may grow closer to you. Then the pain was gone, and it has never returned. Perhaps that's what it means when it says, in all things be thankful. Maybe more and more often, we should pray the prayer of thankfulness for our problems. Prayer is a concentration of positive thoughts. Right? Prayer is a concentration of positive thoughts. Right? Instead of asking for solutions to our problems and just being interested in getting rid of them, which is a form of resistance, right? We become thankful for them, that they're making us uncomfortable with perhaps a disharmony or a wrong focus or an out of balance set of values for the moment, or maybe we're just forgetting who we really are. And so these problems come up. They are not destructive. They're helpful. They're calls to attention, calls to inquiry, calls to bring us back to awareness. Like, hey, whoa, wait, what am I thinking about? What am I doing? Where am I? You know. Many common problems are caused by wrong attitudes. People see themselves as the center of the universe and judge everything as it relates to them. Naturally, you won't be happy that way. You can only be happy when you see things in proper perspective. All human beings are of equal importance in God's sight and have a job to do in the divine plan. I'll give you an example of a woman who had some difficulty finding out what her job was in the divine plan. She was in her early 40s. She was single and needed to earn a living. She hated her work to the extent that it made her sick. And the first thing she did was to go to a psychiatrist who said he would adjust her to her job. So after some adjustment, she went back to work, but she still hated her job. She got sick again and then came to me. Well, I asked her what her calling was, and she said, I'm not called to do anything. That was true, or that was not true. What she really meant was that she didn't know her calling. So I asked her what she liked to do, because if it is your calling, you will do it as easily and joyously as I walk my pilgrimage. I found that she liked to do three things. She liked to play the piano, but wasn't good enough to earn a living at it. She liked to swim, but wasn't good enough to be a swimming instructor. And she liked to work with flowers. I got her a job in a florist shop so that she could earn her living working with flowers. She loved it. She said she would do it for nothing. But we used the other things too. Remember, she needed more than just a livelihood. She needed other things. The swimming became her exercise. It fits in with sensible living habits. The piano playing became her path of service. She went to a retirement home and played the old songs for the people there. She got them to sing, and she was good at that. Out of those three things, such a beautiful life was built for that woman. She became a very attractive woman and married a year or so later. She stayed right in that life pattern. Right? This is wonderful advice. Wonderful advice to sit down and think, what is your role in this world? What is it that Mother has given you? Right? The things that you enjoy doing, the things that are inspiring to you, things that are pleasant for you, to do. Write those things down and then think of how to use them in service of others. All right? That piano playing was that didn't hit me at first. I was like, oh, well, that'll be good for mental health. All right? But actually, it was good in service, going to an old folks' home and playing the piano. Good idea. Really good idea. Huh. That'd be a nice exercise, actually. I'm going to toy with that later on this evening. Maybe just kind of writing down some things that I would like to do and ways that I could maybe work them into a life pattern like this. I haven't thought in terms of life pattern like that before. And being consciously creative in your life. I pretty much take it as it comes. I like this idea, though, of having some inspiration in it, some awareness in it, some mapping out. I think there's room for that along the path. I think ultimately we know we're not the doer. But heck, while we think we are, we might as well we might as well do some things we enjoy as we wait to know that we didn't do it. No, I love this aspect of life. One thing I'm learning as I get older here is that can't time slip that in for you, just to remind you that as we get older, that I mean, life is just not that serious. I don't think I don't. I've always had, I just maybe nobody cares. I'm just sharing this stuff with you. But growing up, heaven and hell was always such a huge deal to me, and it was really such a panic to not end up on the wrong path, and it was never helpful. I mean, church was least helpful with that problem because they were always telling me all the ways I could be tricked and all the ways that I couldn't test my mind, that I couldn't trust my mind, and that my nature was sinful to begin with. And it was just a real critical situation that I was in, and it was very stressful. And I've still carried that through 60 years of my life, that religious life, spiritual life was always such a concern, such a like a real problem to deal with, a very important thing. And it really was never an expression of joy. It was never an expression of delight or fun. And you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, you read the Bhagavatam, you read the Ramayana. Where does that idea of spiritual life come from? A life well lived is bliss and joy and laughter and enjoyment and contentment, regardless of circumstance and condition, right? And so at some point, as friends, we have to let go. We have to let go of our worry that we're not going to make it. We have to let go of our idea like, oh, this isn't going to happen. Right? We need to let go of this grabbing aspect of our spiritual life and learn to enjoy it. This it begins now. This moment, we don't become immortal after we die. Duh. Right? I mean, how, and yet we somehow think about that, that we, oh, our immortality, our eternal life, oh, that begins at realization. No, you're living it now. Have you enjoyed it? You can't die. This ain't going to end. This is going to transfigure from one grand experience to another as you blossom, unfold, gain more and more awareness, and see farther and farther and farther in your understanding. Right? This is beautiful. This is incredible. This is a wonder. And it's verifiable in yourself. This is why we practice, not to get it, but to realize it, to see it, to enjoy its presence in us. God is as close to you as he or she will ever be. You don't need to do anything to get closer. Have you enjoyed that? Have you enjoyed the embrace today? That's one of the things that I was trying to get at in myself when I kept talking about these little vignettes, these little love letters that God, the Divine Mother, puts together everywhere for us, just for when you're paying attention. Savia and I were walking on the beach down there, and there's so many things to catch your attention, but there's so many things to see that are beautiful, but they're not beautiful unless you notice them. One of the things we were talking about is the arrangements of all these rocks in that flat sand on the beach when the water comes up, gets them all shiny, and then runs down and leaves lines in the sand from them, and all the rocks just kind of sitting there. It looks like a painting. The arrangement, the composition of where the rocks are sitting, and they're shiny and the colors are coming out, and then the flatness of the sand, and then you get those little rivulet designs in the sand. It's amazing in this world how beautiful it is when you stop and you look and you become present and you see just about everything everywhere is beautiful, is really wonderful to look at. And when we look through the world in that way, we see the beauty, and then we look at what is beautiful, which is the divine principle that is shaping this moment, right? That's what spiritual practice is. It's going into yourself and seeing God there. And if you can't see him, it's knowing that he's there anywhere, right? Either you're the one silly, not looking in the right place, or he's being silly and hiding on you, staying just out of your eyesight. It's an invitation to play. It's not an invitation to panic. God has left me. What's wrong with me? Why am I such a horrible sap? Right? That's not the message at all. God cannot be away from you, cannot separate from you, could not be separate from you. Enjoy that. Enjoy that. And if you can't see him, don't suppose that he's left you. Suppose he's playing hide and seek or peekaboo with you, right? And so play it back and go looking. Where are you? Right? Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your time with the beloved. It's going to be forever. Right? So stop struggling, stop seeking, stop working, stop grabbing, stop stressing, and begin sitting in the presence of pure love, knowing that there is nothing that can stop you now. That's the other way of saying that the cobra has bitten you. There's no way to stop this. Your enlightenment is racing toward you. The beloved is running toward you at 16 steps to every one of yours. And when he hits you, when he catches you, boy, what an explosion of joy you've got coming. You'll drop everything. Yes. So this positive attitude, this idea, I learn from my problems, I grow from my obstacles. I transcend my negativities. I keep my eyes on God, and I'm always using her as my touchstone to find my bliss, to find my love, my intimacy, my strength, my courage, my confidence, right? My immortality. And I sit and I use everything to keep my eyes on that. She strayed right in that life pattern. I knew another woman who was confined to her room and had been there for quite some time. I went to see her, and I could tell immediately from the lines in her face and the tenseness of her that it wasn't physical at all. And I don't think I had talked to her for more than 5 minutes before she was telling me all about how mean her sister had been to her. The way she told it, I knew that she had told the story again and again, and had mulled over in her mind constantly that bitterness against her sister. I found myself explaining to her that if she would forgive, ask forgiveness, and make peace with her sister, then she could look for an improvement in her health. Huh? She said. I'd rather die. You have no idea how mean she was. So the situation drifted for a while. Isn't this the truth, though? We feel these things inside, have an argument with somebody or get something against somebody. And that's all we think about when we're around them. And all it would be was a simple reach out, shake their hand, and just say a kind word, and everything would be fine. But you don't dare because it's their fault. You know, they should reach out to my hand, not me reach out to theirs. And that's what it means to be bound by the ego and have your love trapped by egoism. You can't say you're sorry because you're too proud, because you're too egoistic, right? I'm looking right at myself when I say this, like, oof. It's so true. This ego is a destroyer. It's a destroyer, and it's not you. And see, it's our attachment, our idea that our ego is us, that allows us to be controlled by it like that. That we allow it to cut off our fingers, right? To cut off our ability to reach, to put our arms out and hug somebody or to touch somebody. When we stay preoccupied with ourselves all the time, right? That's why it's a good practice. One of those practices we also talked about is just taking a walk and praying prayers of blessing for everybody that you see, for no reason. You just see somebody walking down the street, you just say, Mother, please give that woman a wonderful day today. Let somebody tell her how beautiful she is, you know. Oh, Mama, give that child a great day today, a real memory. Give them a memory that will be help them through life today, you know. Just like that. Just sit on the bus on the way to work and just make sure you pray for every person you see on the bus. Not serious things. What do you know about them to be serious? Just beautiful things. Just things to remind you that you're there to serve all of them. Just to constantly remind you that God is active and working and listening and building, harmonizing, and be a part of that. Tie into that. Have your practice be that. Have a part of your practice where you're doing that for the people in your life. Just for the first 5 minutes, just go through and let all the people that you know just pass through your mind and just pass them a little positive ray of blessing as they pass through your mind. Yes, Mom, be with John, be with Brian. Yes, please be with my dad. And yes, my mom. Oh, and my friend Bill. Right? And in just a positive way, go through and touch everyone like that. And when you approach a group, I'm just thinking of things that'll be helpful to me, because I walk into groups, my first thing is always, oh, show me a corner somewhere, give me a closet, right? And instead of that, walk in, the first person you see, bless them, think of something positive for them, think about their realization. I really enjoyed doing that. Yesterday evening, we did the relics and the shrine came out because of Vivekananda's birthday. And so we were using them, being blessed by them. And so I was sitting there in the auditorium just watching people go up one at a time to get blessed by the relics. And I was sitting there just watching it. And then I was sitting there thinking, well, you should be praying for each one of them. You shouldn't just be sitting here watching them or just sitting here doing your own practice. And so I just started praying that Mother would give each and every one of them realization as they got up there, like, oh my, it would be so easy for you to give them some enlightenment right now, Ma. It would cost you nothing. And how exciting it would be for all of us and for them, my goodness, right? And then I imagined all these bodies just sort of piling up on the stage because everybody's in samadhi. So and I thought, well, that would be a good problem to have, Ma. That's all right. We'll keep praying. We'll take care of the bodies later. Right? And this is our choice, you see. Your life is your choice. You can have a wild, brazen, crazy time with the beloved, or you can have a very quiet, content sip of tea with the beloved, or you can just run free with the beloved. Do anything but be sad. Do anything but be caught. Do anything but be beat. Get up, try again, laugh your head off at your mistakes. Think of the worst things you can think of about yourself and then laugh at them. Put them in a big pile and set them on fire with laughter because they are not your problem. They are the problem that Mother has been fixing for thousands of years. Let her do her job, you do yours. You be the child, loving its mother, enjoying its mother. So I told her, so what's that?
This is Regina. Can I
Yes.
add something? So I had an opportunity to speak to someone yesterday who I consider very spiritual, and I was complaining about prayer. It seems so silly
Ah,
to ask God for anything, and he said, God knows what they need, but He wants to hear your thoughts.
yeah, that's exactly it. This comes back to how I felt when my mother gave me $10 to buy my dad his Father's Day gift. When I was like 13 in Germany at the PX, and my mother gave me $10 to go find something. Go buy your father a gift, a Father's Day gift. So at first I was really into it, but I was a rather thoughtful 13-year-old. I was walking around, I was thinking, God, This is his $10. Mom got it from him. And why doesn't he just bring his own $10 down here and get what he wants? That would be a lot easier. How do I know what he wants? Right? And so then I was sort of begrudging it a little bit, of course. But then I saw the Snoopy statues and I knew exactly what he needed. So I went over and bought him a Snoopy statue that said, Think Snow. And I gave that to him. And now that I've grown up and I think back on that, I'm like, what an idiot I was as a child. You know, I thought that money was for me to turn into love. That's what the $10 was for. It wasn't for me to go spend his money on his gift. It was for me to take what was $10 to him, right, and to turn it into love by getting a Snoopy statue, right, which was my reflection of what I think my dad would like and need, and which was a beautiful thing. And so, see, that's what we're doing. We're taking this material that's all around us and we're turning it into love, right? If you pick up a rock, it stays a rock until you give it to somebody, and then it becomes love. You know, pick up a card at the store, it stays a card until you give it to somebody. And so it's the same thing for you. It's just a body until you start giving it to people. It's just a mind until you start giving it to people. And then it becomes love, right? So our life is to give. We're not here to get, not even to get God. Even that is not a truth. You already have that. Yours is to learn to act on it, learn to stand on it, learn to get wet with it, right? That's it. Not to get God, you've got him. Now you're here to learn how to spend him, how to spend God. So she said, You have no idea how mean she was. So the situation drifted for a while. But early one morning at dawn, this woman wrote a beautiful, inspired letter to her sister, which she showed to me. There is something very wonderful to be said about dawn, by the way. Sunset is good too. The only thing is, at sunset, most everybody is awake and they're hurrying and scurrying around. At dawn, almost everybody is slowed down or asleep, and they are much more harmonious when they're asleep. So dawn is a good time for spiritual things. I immediately went into town and mailed the letter before she could change her mind. When I got back, she had changed her mind, so it's a good thing that I had mailed it. She worried a little, but by return mail came a letter from her sister, and her sister was so glad that they were to be reconciled. And you know, on the same day that letter arrived from her sister, the woman was up and around and out of bed. And the last I saw of her, she was joyously off for a reconciliation with her sister. There is something to that old saying that hate injures the hater and not the hated. Right? So it's just wonderful, this is kind of like Holy Mother's life. You read through this life and you just see so much beauty, so much kindness, so much transformation happens around this woman. All these stories that she shares of Mother using her because she became dependable for Mother to use. And so our practice makes us dependable for Mother to use, right? She knows that when she calls on us, we won't be too selfish to hear her. She knows when she calls on us, we won't be too tired to reach beyond our effort to help, right? She makes that depressed person sit next to us at the bus stop because she knows she can count on us to turn to them and say hi and to be available, right? So this is why we practice, to remember that we're always available, right? Always available. Some people spend much less time picking a life partner than they spend picking out a car. Okay. They just drift into these relationships. Really, we pretty much run our life like that, or many people do. We just kind of drift into all of our situations, right? There's nobody driving the chariot. We don't know what we are. We don't know who we are. We don't know how to be happy. We don't know how to find contentment, all these things. And so we just keep waking up and sort of stumbling through the day in the sort of same order, hoping that something gets us somewhere, right? But it's beautiful. We practice to know that God is driving, and we practice to know where we're going toward divine love, toward a contentment, a deep and abiding bliss, right? Toward unselfishness. No one should enter the family pattern unless one is much called into it, as I was called into my pilgrimage. Otherwise, there will be tragedy. I can remember a woman who couldn't get along with her husband, and I could see they didn't have anything in common. I finally said to her, "Why in the world did you marry that man in the first place?" And she said, "All of my girlfriends were getting married, and he was the best I could do at the time. This happens all the time. Do you wonder why there are so many divorces? People get into family patterns without being called into it. Emotional attachment can be a terrible thing. When I was working with people who had problems, it often was a problem of some emotional attachment that obviously needed to be broken. One was a 16-year-old girl. By now, she's probably happily married to somebody else. I always say time heals all wounds, but she thought then that her heart was broken because her boyfriend had married someone else. Although she had had a hard time coming through it, after a time she was able to look upon it philosophically. It does take time. In fact, sometimes people recover quicker from the death of a loved one than from a loved one who has left them. Live this day. Yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Wow, there's a beautiful sentence. Sounds like a Hallmark card right there. So if you're going to make a card for somebody, here's your quote. Ready? Here it is. Live this day. Yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Never agonize over the past. Never worry over the future. Live this day and live it well. That is the summary right there. That is the beautiful message. Worry is a habit. It is something that can be worked on. I call it relinquishment of the worry habit. There are techniques that help. I talk to some beautiful church people and I discover they still worry. It's a total waste of time and energy. If you are a praying person who prays with faith, you would immediately and automatically take what you're worried about to God in prayer and leave it there in God's hands, the best possible hands. This one technique, which is excellent. In the beginning, you may have to take it back to God quite a number of times before you develop the habit, which I developed, of always doing everything you can in the situation and then leaving the rest safely in God's hands. How often are you worrying about the present moment? The present is usually all right. If you're worrying, you're either agonizing about the past, which you should have forgotten long ago, or else you're apprehensive over the future, which hasn't even occurred yet. We tend to skim right over the present moment, which is the only moment God gives any of us to live. If you don't live the present moment, you never get around to living at all. And if you do live the present moment, you tend not to worry. For me, every moment is a new and wonderful opportunity to be of service. And that's where we're going to stop for today.